most Iranian scholars who have written or commented on the country's ethnic and national issues tend to see Iran as an ancient nation with some kind of central state, or at least a central state since the Achaemenid Empire in 550 BC, if not even prior to that, during mini empires of the Medes or other dynasties. This approach on the part of Iranian academics really amounts to what Drakulich terms academic nationalism. Drakulich talks about four particular categories of academic nationalism: imperialist, Marxist, Hesperian, and liberal. I'd like to expand on his ideas and argue that the academic nationalist position could also be observed in other contexts, including what I considered academic nationalism in the context of Iranian academic writing. Most Iranian scholars, wary of the dangers to Iran's national unity, insist that the Iranian case is indeed unique among other nations and should not be specifically confused with national units artificially concocted by colonialists elsewhere in the Middle East, or in other words, in other parts of the African and Asian continents. They argue that in spite of a considerable diversity in terms of cultural and linguistic traits, all Iranians have historically constituted one indivisible nation. Some even find it unacceptable to use such seemingly innocent terms as ethnic groups or ethnicities. And they prefer to use other terms like linguistic groups or cultural groups instead of ethnic groups, because they argue that these terms are basically terms imported from Western sociology into Iranian scholarship. Like, for example, they use, this is really a common usage among some Iranian scholars who are infused with this, what I refer to as academic nationalism. They even refer to some ethnic groups in terms like Arab-speaking Iranians or Turkish-speaking Iranians, instead of saying Arabs or Turks, there is a lot of connotation behind such. These terms are not innocent. We know discourses do matter. They have implications. Well, let's take the word secessionism, or any perceived overture to secessionism in the academic world in Iran is really disparaged. It's a taboo term. You should not ever use it. And by definition, secessionism, or any inclination that shows signs of secessionism among a minority or among an ethnic group, is immediately associated with foreign conspiratorial designs to dissolve the nation. But it's interesting, the same academicians who are adamant about any particularistic demands on the part of, let's say, ethnic groups, and look at them with suspicion, when it comes to other existing nation states in the region, especially the Arab countries, they immediately lose their sensitivity towards issues like national integrity, and consider these countries like Iraq, Syria, Jordan, Pakistan, Afghanistan, etc., as more or less fabricated entities with no history, no nationhood whatsoever, and in that sense, they are not really entitled to their current borders either. For example, when this whole issue of Kurdish referendum came up, I mean, forget about the official line the Iranian state is taking, Iranian government is taking toward the issue, but some Iranian nationalists, some academicians, in a way began arguing that, well, it's fine. I mean, after all, Kurds are not Arabs. They are ethnically, they are Iranians, and they shouldn't be part of Iraq. I mean, so the whole idea of national integrity loses its worth when it comes to others, you know. So this is exactly what an academic nationalism is all about. Of course, there are other positions on the Kurdish referendum. For example, another nationalist position on the issue in Iran is, well, I mean, if they get their independence from Iraq, then there is always a danger that this whole Kurdish nationalism may spill over to Iran, and Iranian Kurds may have the same, basically, they may raise the same demands and ask for some kind of self-rule or some kind of self-government. So again, there is some kind of apprehension among Iranian nationalism in that regard. Now, when it comes to Iranian academic writing on the issue of ethnicity, again we find some who oppose the very term ethnic group or ethnicity and its usage for Iranian landscape. The opponents argue that these communities have existed in their current homelands for many centuries. They are not immigrants to this land. And they have developed very close cultural ties with the rest of the people. And they have so much affinities with the rest of the population that in spite of the diversity we find in linguistic sense or cultural sense among different groups, they don't really constitute ethnicities per se. Yet the very same authors, when it comes to some specific demands raised by members of these groups, they immediately brand them as the Persian word qawm-gera, literally meaning ethnic zealots. Here they don't mind using the word ethnic when it comes to criticizing their demands, okay? Ethnic zealots, qawm-gera. The very term qawm-gera, or I see, the word literally means ethnicist, but ethnicism in Western, in English language usage has a different meaning. So I try to avoid that. I prefer to use ethnic zealot, not even ethno-nationalist, because it goes beyond that, because it's a very general term. When people use, when some academics use, or officials for that matter, when they use the word qawm-gera or ethnic zealot, it can include any demands from very simple demands about, let's say, having newspapers in their own languages, or letting to have children get schooling in their mother tongues, all the way to demands for secession. They all fall under one term. It really obfuscates the whole issue of ethnic relations, you know, when you use that term. I mean, the term has such a heavy load of ideology.